There we go. Cool. We are recording. It is, what is it? June the 3rd/4th for some of us. Plan team weekly planning meeting. So the first thing on the agenda, just an update or an FYI, the Simplified Groups and Projects working group, to be specific, kicks off this week. Super excited for this. I'll link the MR here in the notes in case you haven't seen it, but still open if folks want to join as a member. We have quorum in terms of functional leaders, and I'm super excited about sort of the diverse mix of folks we got on it, representing different stages and different functions, which is great. But would still love your contributions. So if you're interested, feel free and join. And I will do my best to circulate and share proactively kind of updates and what's going on each week. We'll meet weekly for at least a little while. So I'll share those around and make sure plan team can see all that, even if you're not in the working group. So that's that.
Exciting. I will be there. All right, demo time. I will take this demo of bulk edit of health status. All right, I'm going to demo locally just because the front end for this is in maintainer review. And I don't know if we want to, it's behind a feature flag, which is not turned on yet. And I don't know if we want to turn it on yet because we do not have bulk status as part of the list view yet. That's a separate issue that we're gonna work on, but we wanted to take care of. And we're holding until the view refactor that feature flag is turned on before we add that to the list view. But I want us to make progress, or we want to make progress on getting bulk edit thing, because I think it still has value even though it's not shown in the list view. Having said, on to the demo. So we are in group issues here. I'm going to edit issues and move this Zoom thing. I see we have health status here that lists the health status. I'm going to select a few. The what? All right, let's make them all at risk. Update. All right, it is done. We will verify that by clicking into the issue. And it is at risk. Woo. We've also got it done for projects, for project list view. That is available. I have an import on this. That's available here too. Questions?
Raise his hand.
I have a question. Do we plan on displaying health status on the list directly in the future?
Yeah. So that's, once there's an issue for it, we just are working in parallel on the refactor of list view over to view. So once that feature flag gets turned on, then we'll work on adding it to the to the list view. I just don't want to keep. Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't stop it, but yeah. Yeah,
from going out. Yeah, I just wanted us to limit, because we've been adding a bunch of stuff to the Haml list view while I've been waiting for the view refactor to be done. I'd like to avoid doing that as much as possible because we're so close to turning on that feature flag. Next question. Gabe.
100% supportive of the waiting for the view refactor. And in line with that, I would strongly encourage everyone to think about the Epic car issue row and having some sort of parity between the issue lists row for this exact reason of if we're going to show health status, like when do you show it and why, and how do you make sure there's a consistent experience of looking at an issue in a list view versus like in an epic? Because I think that people are going to want to see the same information, maybe at like different points depending on what they're trying to do, but it'd be nice if we could come to have some sort of consistency, because right now it's pretty jarring when I go from like the issue list view to the epic view where I see an issue, to even when I go on an issue and I see related issues, how there's different information showed in all those different places. It's hard for me. So I'm just voicing that and hoping that we can work towards unity. So,
Is there an issue
yeah.
for that?
I don't know.
So there's issues for adding, there's issues for adding missing things from the issue list that we have in, say, boards, or the other way around. I don't know if there's like a holistic issue or epic that, and maybe there's a UX research issue on that. But if there's not, we should definitely create an issue for that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. It's especially, I think, easier to attain if we have like a view component that represents what that looks like, and then we can reuse that same view component across all the contexts. So if it doesn't exist, I will take it upon myself to create it in the morning.
I think we have related issuable item inside view shared folder, which is possibly like a card kind of thing that appears to have most of this information. I don't know where that's currently used, but
It's used on issue pages when you have like related issues, and it also applies to related merge requests, I think, when you're displaying an issue in like all the relationships. That's where this is used.
Yeah, it's also used in Epic Tree, right, Flory?
It's a different component, but there's shared styles.
Yeah, which makes it
complicated.
Yeah, because we've the Epic Tree rows have diverged styling wise so much, and maybe that wasn't, like, maybe it shouldn't have, or maybe we should update related issues to match the Epic Tree.
I think we should add classes to the Epic Tree and like make sure we like break away the styles away from related issuables.
Unless
well, there's also use cases where when I'm looking at related issues, I want to see some of the same information that I see on an issue that's on an Epic or on an issue list, right? So like, and I found the same problem, and I ran into it, was talking to a customer today. They asked, and it was through a TAM, when is something on this Epic going to be done? Because they can't tell if anything's in progress or not, or when it says it's going to be shipped in 13.1, but what is the progress of this? And so we went down a rabbit hole, eventually ended up on the issue board where I showed the workflow labels and how that progresses. Like, okay, so this is workflow step it's in. It's like, yes, but you couldn't tell any of that from the Epic view because we don't show labels. And I don't think we should show all of them because it's too much noise. Same like I don't think we should do on the issue board, even necessarily other places, but it seems like we need to figure out how to make all of the metadata available and like progressive discovery, more or less, without having to open a full issue to look through it. Right? That's the idea there.
Cool. Want to move on to the next demo? Flory.
Everybody appears to be muted.
Flory, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, my bad, sorry. So this is boards. This is the drop down here that we added for swim lanes. I'm showing Vue development because basically the latest work is mostly about adding an action that we call when we want to fetch swim lanes. So this happens when we select like group by epic. And this is what happens. So we toggle and we fetch swim lanes, which is just a placeholder right now because we don't have the data yet. And we also don't have any of the components yet. So right now it's not displaying anything, but the blank container here will display swim lanes in the future. And we can switch back obviously towards, and that's it.
Cool.
Very cool.
And Charlie, you're working on the backend to persist the group by state.
That's correct.
Nice. Excited to see that.
The MR breakdown for boards. Sorry, you go, Kate.
I was saying, I know it seems small, but it's amazing. So good work.
Yeah, it's just the beginning. We're iterating. We're doing really small iterations on this because it's a really big feature. There's a lot to it. So we're really like iterations as small as possible for this. Yeah.
I love that for what it's worth. That's great and a great way to break this down. So good job.
I agree.
I just have a question about the word swim lanes. It sounds kind of like a term. Is that the term we're going to use here on in, or can I use something like grouping instead of swim lane? Because we have group by, and it's, I feels to me like swim lanes is kind of like the marketing term for a feature that is actually like a grouping, but I don't know how future-proof that is. I guess
on the back end, you mean?
Yeah, on the back end. So instead of swim lane, I was thinking of putting in something called grouping.
Ooh.
And then
yeah, I think swim lanes is good for the front end. Like it's a good because it's a visual representation of it, which makes it. I don't think it makes much sense on the back end. So I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Swim lanes is a very like Scrum specific term.
Yeah.
But I can imagine a world where we might have a board, like an epic program board someday, and we want to group by, I don't know, milestones or something, right? And that's, you could call it a swim lane, and I think a lot of people would understand what it is, but I don't know if Gabe, you have an opinion here, but I'm okay if it's a more generic term.
Yes, we also want to reuse the group by on iteration report views and future milestone report views.
Right.
But technically, the origin comes from Kanban, and it's actually Kanban specific and not Scrum.
Oh.
So like you have the idea of determining the flow of things like that you pull things through, and the horizontal swim lanes determine sometimes the priority level at which you pull them through. And so I much prefer group by because it's more extensible and inclusive of broader methodologies, and it also like will make more sense in other contexts where we want to group things by like a cross section of a shared attribute. Also looking at using the group by concept on to-dos and a bunch of other places. So I think it's fine to standardize on group by versus swim lanes, even though some people in Kanban will call it a swim lane if we call it group by.
I don't mind if you want to call it one thing or another, but if it's specific to one or more methodologies, but then it kind of risks becoming too entrenched in just a handful of methodologies rather than being more generic.
Yeah,
correct.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, so even on the front end, we should call it group by then, and we can let marketing sort out how they talk about it when we ship the MVC.
There's even confusion around internally. People thought that the vertical issue lists were swim lanes. And when the Gartner analysts said, why don't you have swim lanes? Some folks internally said, we already do. And so like there's a bunch of confusion around what that really means because it's specific to it. Anyway, please, group by what Justin said. But there's a little bit more context and color.
I know there's also a UML thing with swim lanes that means something slightly different, where it means groups of people actually doing a certain thing in their responsibility, a little bit like a flow diagram.
Mm.
But anyway,
I
wanted
at UML.
Yeah, just like my partner just looked up the UML spec. I asked him to do that, and I can just see it as well. So anyway, yeah. So I think there's a risk there to use like having that as sort of confusing. But anyway, yeah. Thank you.
There's nowhere in the designs Flory that says swim lanes currently, is there?
It says group by.
I don't think it does. I think it's like the way we call it internally, probably. Let me check. But I think you're right.
It's the term comes from what customers requested, and those that practice Kanban have requested that specifically. The way that some of our competitors have handled that, instead of being specific to a methodology, they've also used group by, which I saw that and I liked it more than being like, let's just use this. And I just looked at the UML thing, and it's also true. It's like, it's more or less like you have a workflow state, and then you can use a horizontal swim lane to designate which subset thing is responsible for this, whether it's like a person or a you could also say an epic is responsible for implementing a thing. Like I much prefer the more generic term. And I think we can let marketing handle how they want to. Like we might call it a swim lane on the Kanban board marketing page, but I think having a generic abstraction that we can use across multiple views is win.
Cool. Awesome job. Simon, you're up.
All right. I'll just also jump on and say great MRs from Flore. They've been really well compartmentalized and super to review. So thanks. Let's do iterations. So the iterations list is still getting reviewed with docs, but that's our starting point because that's the page I was on. And this is the information we have available right now when you view an iteration. We've got some dates up here. We got the status, we got the title and description. There was going to be some little pill things here with the issue counts like this, but we don't have that information yet. And then from here, we got this little drop-down fellow. Delete doesn't do anything, and because we don't have a mutation yet. So I was probably just going to remove this and get this part reviewed so we have some content on the page. And then we can add the drop down when the mutations exist. And edit currently takes you to just the same as the create form because I haven't finished making an edit form. But the cancel button takes you back to the page you're on instead of the list view. And that's iterations. Also, can other people see this little thing down the bottom here? I've got like a stock tooltip. I don't know what's going on there. It says screenshot 2020.
Yeah, I see it.
Yep.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, I don't know where.
How long has that been there? What's the date on there?
May. It hasn't been there for a month. It just appeared this morning.
Oh.
I think Finder crashed or something. But anyway.
Okay. Nice. Question then on. So we were thinking for next step, getting the issues onto this iteration page. Which would then be followed by either milestones or the charts. What do we need for the MBC, Gabe? At what point can we turn on this feature flag internally? And at what point can we turn it on for all of .com?
What can we get done this? Okay, so here's a good trade-off discussion. I think at a very minimum, if you have nothing else on the report view, you would want to see a list of issues. Honestly, next after an issue of listed issues, you would want to see how many are in the top left corner. There's the complete percentage. You would want to see that. And then after that, you would probably want to see a burn down chart and a burn up chart, one or the other. And then after that, you would want to see it toggleable by count, weight, and time in that order. And then maybe some of the other metrics and things like that. If I were to force rank it, that's the order in which I would do it, probably.
Good. That's the order that was in my head. Yeah, issues is coming up next.
Cool.
Mario is working on that presently, and then I can add them.
I would say
Oh, sorry, I was going to say MRs. Is that at the same level of issues?
Nope.
Or can that's the last?
Yep. Because I think MRs are important, but from a planning standpoint, you have to have, it doesn't matter how many MRs you need to have an issue be done. You need to have an issue be done for it to be done in iteration, right? So the MRs add an important layer of context on top of that. But what enterprise level planning people are looking at is like, is the issue done or not? If not, why not? Give me all the information I can have about that specific reason, right? So I think MRs would come after that.
Okay, cool. So we should create issues for that because I think Mario needs some for the to create the GraphQL calls for issues, and then we can get started on that this week.
Do you want me to update the iterations report view with what I just said about like the more or less order of things?
I think so, Simon.
Yeah,
cool.
That'd be great. Thanks.
And also, it's worth thinking about. I don't know the best way to do it, but what I really would like to see us get to in GitLab, because we can, is showing issues to merge requests in that relationship, right? So like we always look at things in the context of what's an issue and what's a merge request, but when you can look at them together at the same view and see how they relate to one another, I think it's pretty powerful. It like is the being able to have the complete life cycle in a single tool. And I haven't figured out the optimal way to do that, but if anyone has an idea, that would be really cool, because I think instead of segregating things into tabs, being able to look at things more contextually is what we really want to solve for in the long run. So just for what it's worth.
Cool. Any other iteration questions? All right. I will demo this for Kong and Yarka, which is where we are at as far as importing Jira usernames to match them to GitLab usernames. I haven't actually tested this out, so we'll hopefully it works. But I switched over to that branch, so I'll be testing this one locally. I believe this is at UX review. The front end of this is at UX review, and Holly's just taking a look at it. That's the current state tech. Okay, so I am at project issues page here. We import from Jira. Hopefully I'm already set up. Oh no, it's not gonna work.
While you're looking, I'll say this is an awesome improvement, just what you're demoing right now. Because before, when we would fail on like collecting something, we would just throw a 500 view, I believe. So now we have a specific error that says what the problem was, which is an awesome user experience improvement. So kudos.
Nice. I am assuming it's an issue with my GDK. So we're not going to demo. Well, here, let's pause on the demo and talk through the other stuff. And I will try to restart my GDK and see if that works. And then we can demo it at the end of the meeting. Cool. Oh, but I think I'm up next. Here, let me restart and then I'll keep talking. Okay, workflow, just the weekly thing we've been doing on the front end team, just laying out our goals for the week. So this upcoming week, we have a sticky header to improve the lovability of issues, the view issuables list, getting that added to the project page, like I talked about earlier. Which should just improve that, our search pages. We talked about iterations, adding issues to the iteration report. For the filtering issue list by epic. Oh yeah, so for more on bulk editing, we want to add the ability to assign and unassign epics for groups, and then we'll move on to doing that for projects. For Swimlanes, next iteration, we're hoping to get the list headers on there, which should be a good iteration there. And then for requirements management, we're going to add the test results to the requirements management list. Any questions?
I have one or a couple, maybe. Sorry if I'm dominating. With sticky headers, one of the concerns that I had was that because backtrack on other views like the MRs, the things that stick are really like just natural because you basically change the CSS class to make it stick. In our approach, we want the the status to show to the left of the title after it becomes sticky. Does that mean that we need to create like a new, like, is that more work than just figuring out how to gracefully, like if we were to redesign the header a little bit so that the status would always be to the left of the title, would that be easier? Or is it going to be more work to like basically reconfigure what the header looks like and where things are once it becomes fixed?
We'll probably have a separate element for the sticky header that just duplicates the content. Because if you have the actual header become sticky, then that element disappears and then the rest of the content jumps up. So you just leave the original header in place, and then when you scroll down past a certain point, then the fixed one becomes visible. So we can have the icon next to it.
Cool.
And not be next to the main one.
Yeah, that's how I'd approach it. Is like going to be a significantly more work than it, because there is a way that we could work it so that the icon would always be to the left even when you scrolled, so you wouldn't have to have it like a different element, if that makes sense.
That's no more work.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's no more work, then we'll leave it as it was proposed. Just wanted to like make sure.
I left a comment on the issue as well to this effect, but I was wondering if we want to have it just visible when you start scrolling back up rather than always visible. Because then it means if you nudge back up by a line or two, then you have the header slide down. And then it means when you're scrolling down, then you get like maximum screen space. And then if you start scrolling back up, then the header pops into view. Good idea, bad idea?
Not a bad idea. How would that, I think one of the use cases that we want to solve is when somebody gets deep linked and dropped into an issue without having to scroll, can they immediately have context on what it is that they're looking at a comment for without having to like scroll? So
scroll slightly up. We'd have to handle that separately. Good point.
I agree with you though about like
the loss of screen space. We can start with always sticky and then deal with other ideas later, since that's like the simplest thing that solves for what we actually want to solve.
Yeah. I think ultimately eliminate scrolling on issues entirely unless you are literally reading down linearly the history of something. Because at the end of the day, like we did a bunch of user interviews where we watched people interact and we gave them scenarios where we said, hey, like click on this link, get deep linked in. Do you know what you're looking at? And everybody said, no, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what the context is, right? So which is why the title is the first thing to help with that. But then as we progress through like different scenarios, it quickly switched from I'm reading this thing, now I'm going to scroll back up to the top to edit this thing. I'm going to like figure out how to scroll back down to where I was reading before. And so like they're basically context switching all the time within a single issue, and then they're context switching from an issue outside of that into multiple other issues based on what they're trying to read. And I think the ultimate problem we're trying to solve is reducing context switching and scrolling so that people can stay in flow. So however we do that, I have no, like, I'm open to ideas.
In regards to like deep linked issues loading, I don't think it helps that it's slow, especially as you get like way down the discussion list. There's always going to be a couple second delay before that discussion is loaded, before it drops you to where it is. So I know even me, where I know to expect that delay, like I'm already, once I go to the page, I'm messing around with the scroll wheel, trying to get to just all the context of that issue. So I think if we clean that up, and that's probably a separate issue, but if we clean up that performance, that'll help with that. That'll help with that also.
Yeah, I can't remember what issue it was, but I'm pretty sure Flory was in there, and maybe Donald, you were too. It was about getting issues to load under 500 milliseconds, maybe. And it had to do with pagination. How can we improve the performance of the discussions? And like one of the things that I thought was interesting is that we can sort the discussions themselves by newest or oldest, but then within the discussions, the actual notes or the comments are always by oldest to newest. So to render any, if you get deep linked into anything, no matter what way it's sorted, you have to load every single note or comment on the entire issue before you can display anything, because there's no way to show everything by like newest to oldest, or everything from oldest to newest and then paginate it, or jump directly into a specific like deep link and then almost like paginate outwards in both directions depending on where somebody's going to scroll.
I think we also didn't have a way to fetch a specific note. Like the discussions endpoint just gets everything, and you can't just get a single discussion or comment.
However we can solve for that, if we can figure it out together as a team, would be awesome, because that ties directly back into making like OKRs for engineering and also UX for this quarter, which is making issues more lovable, which is the UX side of things, which performance will make it more lovable. And then engineering side is performance of like making issues more performant, because all of our NPS scores basically said we don't like using issues because it's not performant and everything takes forever. And this would be like a really cool way to solve for that, since everybody does deep link into things all the time. If anybody has any brilliant ideas, I would definitely prioritize that and want to prioritize that. So
yeah, we have an engineering KR on the front end plan team and the back end team, I think, also on that exact issue, performance on deep link discussions. So it's a priority for us also.
Well, let's be intentional about prioritizing that if we can, because I think that's like a small, maybe not small from actually fixing it, but that little fix in the overall use case of issues, and also decreasing the amount of scrolling, will make people have much less psychological fatigue from working with issues, based on everything I've seen. And it would make me like to use it more, I'm sure, based on what you said, Donald, too, you too, and probably everyone. Will make us like using GitLab more, which is a win.
There's like a old issue that I had kicking around somewhere of like a preview of the text when you link to a comment to save you having to click around anyway.
Yes, I remember that. And I remember commenting on that. And I think we should do that too, if we can. There's like so many things that I want to do that would be great, that maybe we should like buck the trend and be like, hey, we're just gonna do these because they're quality of life things. And I think that's worth prioritizing, because that's part of the context switching, is when you hover over a link and you see just the issue title or whatever it is, and then you click through because you actually need to see what the thing says, instead of giving that preview right inside of the issue itself. I think that's definitely.
For ones on the same page, there's like a pretty straightforward front end only solution. But for ones on other issues, then it's more complicated, because you have to fetch all discussions for that issue and then just get the one that you want.
Why do we have to fetch all discussions if we know
the note ID?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's just not a way to do it. I may be mistaken, and that might have changed since, but as far as I know, this wasn't a way to get an individual note.
Pretty sure I saw that the other day in the API, that there is a way to get just that. It was part of the 500 millisecond issue talking about discussions, where nobody talks about this other endpoint that you can also fetch notes by, and everybody just uses discussions, but you can actually get, I'm going to look it up right quick because I think there might be a way to do that.
Dude, this will be huge. This could change lives in a good way.
So you can get notes or comments on issues. A discussion is a collection of notes, right? From
Pass to Charlie. I think it's a collection of notes plus some other stuff.
I'd have a look into it. I haven't looked at this in ages.
yeah. So here it is. I'll put it in the Zoom chat so somebody else can do something. You can get a note by ID, I think, is what I was looking at. So there's the discussions endpoint, which will more or less give you a list of all of the discussions that are on the issue. Like grouped by, I think you have your, look at that right quick. Yeah, you have an array of objects, which is your discussions, and then each object has then the like threaded notes within that. But then there's also the notes endpoint where you can fetch just a single note based on the ID of the note. So unless I'm wrong, and like this is where I'm kind of interested about how we solve the problem, because we might have said that that's a constraint if we go through like the normal Rails way of rendering things and giving the data to the view app before it renders. But what happens if you just fetch that via the API and like render it that way without going through?
Yeah, that'd work. Because this way, like when you deep link to a note, then you have the note ID in the URL. So we have kind of all the information we need to fetch this.
Well, there's an endpoint for fetching a note by just an ID and getting a single one back. So
there's also wrong with GraphQL.
I would love to see if we could do that in GraphQL too. So if we can't, we should make it so we can, since that also matches to what we can do in REST. And then we can use GraphQL first, which would be awesome.
I'm just trying it out locally.
All right. While you try that out locally, do we have anything else in the agenda?
Did that buy you enough time to restart your GDK and see if you can?
Yeah, you did. You did, and then I realized that wasn't. So I think we have an issue with the error there. Okay. Because it was that I did not have Jira configured on that project. So here, let me get back into sharing. Okay. I should have linked into here instead of just having it up. But here's what it is right now. So we have the display names from the Jira project on the or from the Jira side of things on the left-hand side. The right-hand side eventually will be drop downs with all of the GitLab usernames. I think the API is ready on that side too now. We just need to add that to the front end. That's pretty much the mapping there. There is going to be pagination on the Jira side, I believe. So I think, I mean, we'll have to see how many, like, I don't know how many Jira usernames there typically are on when people are importing. But if it makes sense to actually have infinite scroll, or if it just makes sense to grab them all and render them all at once. I don't know like what the typical user flow would be. Like, would a user come in here and want to go line by line for every display name for all of their usernames in one sitting? But yeah, for now, I think we're just going to go with infinite scroll on pagination there.
Do we sort this list in any way? Or how is it sorted?
That is a good question. I'm assuming we just, however we get it from the back end, which doesn't look like there's any order. So maybe it's just whatever we get it back from, whatever we get back from the Jira API. How should we sort it?
Well, that's the problem, is that the way Jira works is there's a lot of like any integration or bot thing or whatever has its own display name. So it's like you can see in this demo, there's Trello, there's Jira Service Desk widget, there's like all these things that aren't real people. I think we should see if there's a way to programmatically exclude those reliably. I don't know if there is, but we should look. Because that would eliminate a lot of noise. Because assuming, I'm guessing for the like instances, Jira instances that have like 50 or 60 different like widgets installed or things from the marketplace plugins, like you're gonna have a lot of noise. Because like same within Slack, you like every app that you install has its own name basically. So we should try to eliminate that. And beyond that, I'm not sure. I don't have enough data to tell you how to sort it. But what I can say is we did the Jira survey and we have about 20 to 30 people who are willing to talk to us about this. So I'll reach out and talk to them and see if we can like have some conversations. And then also we should consider for the first iteration before we have that data, putting some sort of like snowplow tracking in place for .com. So we can understand, or maybe we can do this from the database side too, but just, I don't think we're storing it in the database, so I don't know if we can, but how, like what the average user count is on the Jira side of things during the import. And then we can use that data to like, at least understand relative ranges to make some better decisions from a usability standpoint.
Cool. Any other questions?
Cool. Great demo though.
Nice.
This
All right.
one was a doozy, by the way. So good job, because it was super complicated to figure out how we're going to do this, because we want to do it based automatically on email addresses, but then we don't have access to email addresses unless everybody makes it public, and that is a non-starter. So just the whole process, I'm really happy with the team and like impressed by how well we iterated towards a solution based on all the like roadblocks we came across. So kudos to everyone, and to you, Donald, for being awesome and demoing it.
Thanks. No, but that was definitely all the team. Colin, Garka, Holly, everyone. Cool. All right. Who put this in there? Justin, maybe?
Oh
For
yeah.
the Family Day.
I'll put my name on it. Just a reminder that Family and Friends Day 2.0 is next Friday. You probably already knew that, but for posterity, there it is.
What are you all doing? Any plans already?
I don't have any personally. We have been talking about going on a trip at some point soon, so that might happen, but nothing for next week. Probably just stay home. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be staycation here. Can't really go anywhere or do anything, so home it is.
Gabe's gonna hang
Cool.
out with his dog.
I am.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone. Have a good day / evening and a good rest of your week.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.